What is up, YouTube? Dr. Torma here, once again with another video coming in hot. Today we're going to be doing USMLEs because, of course, this channel wouldn't be where it is without the USMLEs, right? Right? One of the hardest exams ever, like literally ever. I mean, there's a reason why being a doctor is so heavily sought after, and there's a reason why, you know, nobody, like almost, well, I think the statistics is like less than 1% of the world, let's just say, make it simple, less than 1% of the world are doctors. Like, not even less than half, like less than half percent of, like, 0.00 something. Um, but the important part is that you are on a journey, and once you pass the MCATs, once you get in medical school, the next step is that USMLE exam. And do not think that this is an easy exam. It is not. It is designed for you to fail. It really is. I heard that from someone else, and I think it's a really great way to put it because it drives home the message that this exam is difficult, even for those who are like on the top of their class in medical school. And it's not because they didn't do anything wrong. It's because the exam is built in a way where you question yourself and you doubt yourself. And when it comes to doubting yourself, man, there's a lot of people out in the world who will be like, who will expect you to know the answers. They have a question, and you as the doctor, you're expected to know the answer because you passed those boards, right? You passed those boards, and you might be thinking, well, boards, what? It's one day where you answer like what, 200, 300, 400 questions, not 200, 300 or 400 questions, right? At the very least. And you're just exhausted, and like, how does that one day define you, right? How does that one day that you sit down on the test define who you are for the next 50 years? Affects what specialty you get, affects how competitive you are, right? Don't question, don't think, do not stop for a second and think that your worth as a human being is dependent on this exam. I don't want you to think that, because you are not a statistic. You are not a number. There are plenty of people who have failed their exams, not once, not twice, not thrice, several times. I once heard someone fail their step one like 9 times. Okay, they failed 9 times, and they still became a doctor, and they still graduated. They still did everything right, and they made it. Wasn't easy, but hey, they made it. And so, why am I saying this? Well, because I'm kind of transitioning to what's going to be eventually be one of the future videos about what happens when you fail the step exam, because it is a very devastating thing. And you go in first aid, and you hear about stuff about like how the first aid chapter. I think one of them, I don't know if it's this year or like one of those chapters somewhere in one of those reading books says, if you failed your step one, you should seek help. You should see a psychiatrist or a therapist or something. And that's not demeaning. That's not like, oh, you're crazy, you're stupid. No, it's because it is psychologically devastating. It really is. How do I know this? Well, big surprise. I failed. I failed step one. I that was the one time I failed. I failed one USMLE. I had one attempt on the USMLE. All the other ones, I managed to get by, but it was tough, right? Step two, I actually did really well on step two, and that was a big, putting my foot in the door to get into residency. Step three is kind of like, it's a step that people don't want to think about, but I somehow got through that too, first try. But yeah, step one is tough. It is hard. It's probably the hardest exam you're ever going to take in your life. People joke about that, or I mean, probably don't joke about it, but it's true. It really is. And if you thought step one was hard, well, step two is even harder. If you thought step two was hard, step three is even harder. I make videos multiple times. I try to pick the best iteration, but this, one of the videos that I made, I mentioned that some of these questions are absolutely ridiculous. They really are. They're silly, right? I got a question once on, this wasn't on a board exam or anything, but it was in medical school, where the question was like, here's a picture of the brain, okay? Which side of the brain is the front side of the brain where the face is? joke. And I'm pretty sure I got that question wrong because they didn't have the cerebellum. Obviously, the cerebellum is like on the back, right? But like, they got the. It was like the shape of a. Yeah, I got a little thing here. So it was like how do I draw this? Like, the brain's got like something like this, right? It's got. I'm not gonna go through the anatomy of a brain, but it looked like this. And they were like, well, which side of the brain is the one that's the front side? They didn't show the cerebellum. They just showed the cerebrum. I'm like, what? So that was silly. That was silly. And those are the types of questions you're gonna get on the steps. Not necessarily that question, but you're gonna get like very silly questions where you can't really study for it. You can't study for these questions, folks, because the question that they're asking you, first aid tells you um, how to pick up one rock, how to pick up two rocks, and how to pick up three rocks. But then you go to step one, and it's like, how do you pick up four rocks? Well, they didn't teach me that at first aid, so I don't know, right? Um, but seriously, there are some people who are just naturally gifted at taking tests, and it shows. It really does. There are some people who really know what they're doing on these exams, and they don't necessarily know more than you. They really don't. They just know how to take tests. They're just good at test taking. Their skills at test taking are very, very profound and significantly better than yours. Maybe they're lucky. I don't know. Maybe there's some people who are just absolutely really lucky at and stuff. I don't think that's what it is. I think there is a level of test taking skill, and I don't think that necessarily means that they're smarter than you. And that's something that's very important. I don't think that taking a test is a measure of your intellect. It's a measure of how good you are at answering questions and how good you are at getting the right question. And whatever that means, whether it's guessing or getting blind and just throwing darts empty-handed, and just blind and shoot, getting the answer right, just having like whatever you did to get the question right, that's what matters, right? They don't care about how much medicine you know. They care, did you get the question right or not? And if you didn't, then that's it. You might have known everything about the brain. You might have a PhD in neurology, and you still got the question wrong because they were asking a very stupid. Their question was so poorly worded, and most questions are. That's why they're so hard, because they're so poorly worded. Some of them. Um. Oh, so I wanted to run through perfect examples of silly things, and a really great example of this is biostats. I don't want you to overlook biostats, because biostats is one of the hardest things to get through for some people. But for most people, if you know your biostats, those are easy questions. Those are very easy questions, folks. If you just took one day to study biostats, you would actually bump up your score by like maybe 10 points. I'm serious. It is, you might get 10 more, you might get like 20 more questions right because you knew all of the biostat stuff. Um, for example, here, let me show you something. Um, so I got this board here, and I'm sure most of you know about this little thing here, right? So I'm trying to do it. Trying to draw little bell curve here. Okay, so obviously normal curve is the area under the curve is 1. So the complete area here is 1. Extends infinitely here, extends infinitely there. But if you take the total amount of area under this curve, it is 1. Okay. Now, why am I showing you the bell curve? Because they it's philosophical. For some reason, everything is a bell curve now. But the USMLE exams, they are somewhat similar. They're very shaped very similarly to the bell curve, to the normal curve, normal curve. Okay, normal curve. Um, and so you've got your medium here, right? And I know I'm teaching stuff you already know, but it's really important because and this is not so much a science thing. It's more of like let's try to understand what the USMLE is, because a lot of people, and I'm going to go back and forth between the knowledge of like actual the biostats thing and the actual what I'm trying to get home here. And that is that wherever you fall on this curve, that's actually what is guided. That's actually what guides the exam. So minimum passing score when I was taking step one, I think it was like 192 or something like that. And then they every year they bump up the score, so now it's like 193. Maybe it'll be 194, 195. It's gonna keep going higher and higher. So it's going to like the high score is like 260, 270, and you go online and you hear people say, oh yeah, I just studied for like an hour and I just happened to get like a 270 or 280. I'm like, no, you're just trolling, right? Most people, you gotta understand, most people online are trolling, and you hear everybody say they got a 270. Everybody, how many people do you go online and you're like, oh yeah, I got a 250 or I got a 240? Even 240 is pretty damn good, but 260, 265, seriously? Okay, so yeah, there's gonna be people who actually did get that score, but how many people do you think? Do you really trust everything you hear on the internet, folks? Really? Do you really trust? You pick a random person who said 265. Do you really think they got a 265, or are they just trying to make you feel terrible? I think they're just trying to make you feel terrible. I don't know a single person who's actually ever shown their score. Like they cross off the name and everything, but they actually show you the report and it said 265 on the exam. No, because that's ridiculous. Okay, reason why? Because of the bell curve. Majority of people are not getting 265s. They're getting like, what was the mean here? So let's go ahead and look at the mean. Step 1, 2019. The mean was 232. Okay, that's pretty damn good. 232. So that means you got 232 here, right? This is the mean right here. You see that? Right there is the mean. I don't know if you can actually, I don't know if this is well suited, but let's say you've got let's say you got 0 here and you got infinity on this end here, okay? So on this end is the low point and on this point is the high point, okay? Because remember, the bell curve goes on infinitely. And this technically should be negative infinity. Technically it should be negative infinity, not zero. Okay. So theory. This is theory, okay? Not everyone, there's nobody getting negative infinity on their USMLE exams. But this is like theoretically, if you were taking an infinite population, they would fit under this some sort of curvature like this, okay? And why is the area in the curve 1? Well, it's because that represents 100% of the people who took the test. Very simple, okay? And then it's got the standard deviation is 19, okay? 19, folks, 19. So, what does that mean? Remember your curves. 19 standard deviation. So, we're going to say SD here equals 19. That means you go 19 plus 19 here. Let's say plus 19 here, and then minus 19 here, right? So, folks, what is the standard deviation then? Got to remember your standard deviations. 68. Let's just make it very simple and just call it 68. I know there's more decimals afterwards, but let's just say 68. So when somebody asks you, when the test takers ask you, okay, question number 35, guy takes step 1 and scores 1 standard deviation higher. How many people did they score higher than, percentage-wise? Did they score higher than 68% of the population? Did they? Oh, yeah, sure they did. Yeah, because what's standard deviation 68? No. Listen, folks. 68 is this. This whole thing here is 68%. Do you see? Do you see what I'm getting at? That's 68%. Is in the middle here. You got to remember that there's an entire area here that we're forgetting about. So don't just write 68 because you studied it and you were like, oh, 68. No. No. You got to understand. You have to understand what you're talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You got to understand it. So, all right, so how do you do this? Well, it's maths, right? It's maths. So if 68% is in the middle here, then 1 minus 0.68, 100% minus 68%, I don't know, what is that, like 32%? So 32% represents the outside of this. And so each side carries an equal part. So 32% minus 2 is 16. So you got 16% on this area here, right? 16% is on that area. So they scored right here. This is where they marked their score right here in this area. They scored right there. Okay, so the glare is kind of hard to see. Okay, so if they're at 68%, if they're 1 standard deviation above the mean, that means that they're 1 minus 16, which is 84%. They're at 84. They scored 84%. They scored better than 84% of the population. 1 standard deviation. Okay. So why am I saying this? Well, first of all, it's to get you to understand some basic science, some basic biostats. But the other thing to understand is that 1 standard deviation is a lot. 19 is like, oh, 19 points. What is that? 232 minus 19, or 232 plus 19 is like what? That's 241, 251, right? So 251. So you scored 251. You were better than 84% of all aspiring doctors who've got into medical school. Think about that for a second. 19 is a standard deviation. It's a very small. To someone out in the streets, they think 19 is a very easy number. That's a very simple. No, it's less than 20. It's a simple no. You gotta understand the facts here, okay? And the years, they just keep getting higher and higher. 2017, the mean was 229 with a standard deviation of 20. 2018, mean was 230, standard deviation 19, and then again 2019, folks, mean was 232. So the mean went from 229 to 230 to 232. So that is the reason why the minimum passing score is going up. It's not so much because people are, I don't know if people are getting smarter. Maybe the metric is just different. Maybe the test, the way that they're making the test is different. Or maybe people are getting smarter and the questions are just getting harder and harder. But why are the questions getting harder and harder? Maybe because they're just poorly written, folks. It's not always the test writer. It's not always the test is always right. Sometimes they make mistakes, or sometimes they're just so poorly written that, yeah, technically answer choice A is right. But like if you are a normal person, then maybe B is the right answer. Okay, and yeah, maybe there's maybe in middle school there were 4 answer choices, but in college there's 5 answer choices. In middle school there's choice A, there's choice B, there's choice C, there's choice D. Then it goes to like H, I, J, K. You know, like it just keeps going and going and going. So it's not really multiple choice. It's a lot. So I mean, there's a little bit of math here. I want to just demonstrate to you kind of the reality of the USMLE. I'm trying to drive 2 points here. Know your basic biostats, because that shows up on all 3 steps. Okay, and then the second thing is, you are not just a number. You are more than that. And when it comes to standard deviations and means, this is, you might fall. Majority of people, 68% of them will fall within this range. And the people who say that they are like 250s, 260s, well, they're little to none. Okay, there's very little of them out there, and a lot of people online are lying. And why? How do I know that? It's just you gotta understand that not everybody is an Albert Einstein genius. Okay, even Albert Einstein had a lot of flaws. Okay, and I don't want you to think that just because you didn't, just because you fell somewhere over here, okay, just because you fell somewhere on the bottom doesn't mean anything. These are just numbers. They don't represent you. They aren't. And numbers, these numbers can change every year. You can see that they're changing. So that's what I'm trying to get home is that USMLE exams, you just gotta get through them. And in future videos, I'll talk a little bit about what happens when you don't pass. Obviously, it's very devastating. I talked a little bit about that before. At this point, I'm just ranting, so I'm going to try to end the video in a timely manner. But the point of the matter is, there's a certain way to think about questions. And if you're not that person, it's okay, because you'll get there. You might not get there the way Adam got there, or Kenneth. You might not get there the way Joey got there, but you yourself, you have what it takes, and you have to believe that. Okay, you have to understand that the test was designed for you to fail, and I genuinely hope that you take that to heart. That the test was designed for you to fail, and that you were already pre-screwed from the beginning, and to get to the point where you pass or you do well, it's a long journey. It doesn't come easy. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in future videos, but I want to just lay out. There's something on my hair. We'll lay out something. We'll lay out the groundwork that the test is designed for you to fail, and people have failed it. And the reassuring thing is, a lot of doctors have failed this exam, and they're still doctors. Okay, that's the driving message here. That should convince you that, wow, this isn't actually that bad, because I failed, but if everyone else failed and they became doctors, then maybe it can happen to me too. All right, so take it to heart, folks, and I'll see you later.